Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest. But before I do that, here's a quote that I picked just for this episode. I will prepare and someday my chance will come. Abraham Lincoln. My dear friend, Steve Rozenberg is on. I'm going to do a quote right here, actually, a part of the family of Culture Matters. This is a direct quote. I have never met anyone with as much energy and as dedicated to an outcome as Steve Rozenberg. Tony Capullo. Actually, the day of this recording, 8,035 days ago, September 11th, in memory of September 11th, Steve Rozenberg's life changed. 28 years old, in college, actually at 21, started flying commercial piloting, commercial jets, essentially, and turned that experience in 2001, which is crazy, 8,035 days. I had to look it up, actually, into a real estate company, management company that he sold. And today he's an advisor, a coach, still flies, which we're going to unpack that, an author, a podcaster, and just an all-around amazing guy that I emailed our buddy to ask for help research for today. And I got that quote. I've never met anyone with as much energy as dedicated to an outcome as Steve. And anyway, I could say more. It's easy with you, Steve. But thanks for coming on. And it hit me like a bag of bricks that today's the day. This is insane.
It's funny. I didn't even, I mean, I knew what today represented, obviously, but I didn't think about us being on today talking about my past and what that did for me and what path it took me down to where I am today. And a lot of it was that moment. It changed obviously millions of people's lives. I was not immune to that day as well.
Now, you were thinking of being a pilot from a young child in LA. I know that much. Where do you think that passion came from?
That's a great question. I don't know where it came from. I know, I came from a standard blue collar family. Both of my parents worked. They instilled that work ethic into us. That, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it all and you're going all in kind of. And I was a very driven, kid, growing up in the sense of, playing sports. I played football. Then I started doing bodybuilding and I was very, very laser focused when I got in touch. I mean, I remember, I wrote about this in my book, but I remember I'm going to say I must've been 8 or 9 years old. And I actually wanted to buy stock in AT&T. And I looked up in the newspaper and I learned about it and I called the stockbroker and he didn't believe me. And my mom had to get on the phone and say yeah, this kid's serious. He wants to buy, and I bought 2 shares. I didn't have any money, but I wanted to own stock. I didn't know what it meant. And so, growing up as a little kid, I remember looking up in the sky, seeing these planes, growing up in Los Angeles, at the beach area and seeing them coast out over the water, getting feet wet. And I remember thinking where do they go? What, how does this happen? And I just remember thinking man, one day I'm going to do that. And I just remember thinking one day I'm going to be the guy that's in that plane looking down on LA as I go feet wet going over the Pacific. And at 25 years old, I was the second youngest person hired by this major airline that I worked for. At the time, it was Continental Airlines.
Wow.
I had worked prior to that to TWA, getting my hours, which, as you know, on the East Coast. But I was very driven and it's one of those things, a fish doesn't know it's in water. People would say man, you're how do you do this? And I just thought to myself, I'm just getting up every day, just doing what I do. It wasn't even I'm going to be the best. And, now, with social media and everyone's hyping everyone up, it was just what, I'm going to do this as hard as I can. And then the next step, I'm going to do that as hard as I can. And I'm just going to keep stacking chips, building my wall. And that's what I did. And at 25, I got hired. Best job in the world. I was, I just got married and I got based in Guam. So I was flying out of the South Pacific, all over Asia, Australasia, South Pacific, Micronesian islands. To me, it was the best job in the world, most safe, most secure, at a seniority with a major airline. And then 9/11 came. And that changed everything because 2 days after 9/11, September 13th, I got my furlough notice. And that's when I realized that my safe and secure dream job was never safe and it was never secure.
Wow.
And they said basically, hey, good job being a good employee, but you're about to be on the street with 50,000 other pilots. So good luck. And that was it. I mean, I was a number. I was a cog in a wheel. And you realize like, wow, like, what am I going to do? Because my whole life, all I ever wanted to do was be a pilot. I didn't have any other skill sets. I didn't know how to do anything. It's like you're so, you know,
Wow.
when you're so specialized in doing something, when that something goes away, which no one ever thought would happen or was on the verge of going away, you have no skill sets to society. And that was very, very humbling, I will say, to realize I don't know what I'm going to do. Like if this airline thing doesn't work out, I really don't know. And it was a very scary time for me, I'll be honest.
Have you found that a lot of the people that you've helped in business advisory and coaching, mentorship are in those similar predicaments?
You know, yes and no. I don't think I'm anyone special. I think I'm a pretty driven person and I'm very laser focused. And I'm like when I see it and I lock on, it's like, it's not stopping me.
Hmm.
I don't see a lot of people with that much tenacity. And I think today, and again, I'm not trying to criticize social media, but I think a lot of times that hurts a lot of us because it's hitting us from so many different angles. We don't know what is our one thing. And I think the problem with that is when they don't know what their one thing is, everything is the thing. And so they're trying to hop around.
Hmm.
My job a lot of time is to refocus them and ask them, what is that one thing? What is your goal? And they don't know. The majority of entrepreneurs, in general, let's say as an example, they were good at a skill set.
Hmm.
And so because of that, they thought they could do it better than who they worked for, or they were running away from pain or running towards pleasure. Most are running away from pain, the pain of a 9-to-5 job, but they really don't know what they're running to. And
Hmm.
so they don't create a business with a destination. They create a business, which is really just a lower paying job because now you have the stress, the headache, the frustration of everything that goes on with it. And they don't have a destination. And one of my questions I always ask entrepreneurs based on what you asked me is, what's the destination of this business? Like when do we land?
I
And
love that.
they look at me like I have, 3 heads and I'm speaking bear. And so I explained to them, okay, in the airline industry, when we get in the cockpit, I just got in today from Tokyo, Japan. So as an example,
Wow.
I was in Tokyo, Japan. Before we get in the flight deck of the aircraft, it's a Boeing 777. Before I get in that flight deck, we go to the briefing room and we check our routing. We check the weather. We check the fuel. We check the destination. We know the airport. We know what time we're going to land in Houston, Texas. We know the weather. We know emergency contingencies. Hey, if we lose an engine over the Pacific, we're diverting either to Midway Island. We're going to the Aleutians. It's all planned. It's not by chance, right? Everything is very, very detailed. And we know exactly at 2:14 p.m., we will be touching down. The mains will be touching down in Houston, Texas, as per our flight plan. So bearing that in mind, I asked business owners, what's your flight plan? Like, where are you going? Because if I just said, hey, Jay, tomorrow, let's just go to the airport. Let's go to any local airport and let's just pick a plane. Let's jump in it. Let's take off. And then let's just fly around and then we'll figure out where to go. I have no idea how much fuel. I don't know where we're going. We can go to Maui. We can go to Alaska. We can go to Rio. Hey, you want to go to London? But I've never been to any of those. I don't know how to get there. And if there's an emergency, I have no idea how we're going to survive. You probably wouldn't get in the plane with me. But yet most people start a business that way. And then they're shocked when they crash into the Atlantic Ocean because they had no idea what they were doing. So I use that analogy because
Wow.
most people have flown. But it really hits home that why you wouldn't get into an airplane that way because of your life, but you'll risk your financial life doing the exact thing that you wouldn't do. And so when you put it that perspective, it's so that to answer your question, that's what I see a lot of people is my job a lot of times is to slow them down to speed up, I guess you could say.
Where would one start with a plan in your estimation?
Well, I think at first I use, and I was taught this by one of my mentors, was you got to create a sale date for your business. And so the sale date doesn't mean, because the first answer I get from most people is, Steve, I don't want to sell my business. Wasn't my question. That's not what I said. I said a sale date. The only way you have a business that is saleable, that's a saleable asset, means it's running on processes, procedures, and systems, not off of you. And it's not in your head. The more important and the more involved you are in your business, the less valuable it is. So if you don't pick a date, so for example, if I was coaching you, Jay, and you said, okay, June 1st, 2027, I'm going to have a 10 million revenue business with 35% profit margin, working 5 hours a week. Okay, now we know where we're landing. That's the landing date. It's very specific. The more specific we could be, the better. And the reason is everything works from that. Your business and your life reverse engineer from that destination, just like we do in the airplane. And the vision and the culture in your company is based on that date, because everyone needs to know, hey, where are we going, Jay? Hey, June 1st, 2021, 2027, we are going to be a $10 million company with 35% margin. Everyone needs to know it. They need to live it. They need to breathe it. So going back to your question, I feel you have to start with the end and work it backwards, because if you don't know that and you can't articulate it, how are you going to hire people that are going to work your vision and have the right culture in your company and live and breathe what you're doing? Because, good employees are not bought, they're taught. And, people come for a paycheck, they stay for the leadership. And so if you have, when I go into business and I see a high turnover, I see a lot of people turning over, I know it's bad leadership. And then I'll ask them these questions. Where are you going? They don't know. And I'm like, so basically they're just here for a paycheck until they get a better paycheck, because they need to believe in why they're here. They need to bleed your company, and they don't have to believe it, but you have to believe it more than anyone else. And they go, you know what? I don't think we're going to get to 10 million, but Jay believes it so much. I got to believe in that guy. I'm going to fight and be behind him because he believes it with all of his heart. And that's what a leader does. And so kind of a long way around to your question is getting them to understand the destination, and then understanding that their role is to become the leader. They may not be the leader now, but I would say to you, okay, Jay, if you want to build a $10 million company, are you a $10 million CEO? Do you act like it? Do you talk like it? Do you walk like it? And what do you do on a daily basis? Because if you're a $50,000 employee and you're doing $50,000, and there's nothing wrong with that, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with being that person, but you will never build a $10 million business because you are in the wrong position. You're in the wrong seat on the bus. You can't be a passenger in the back and say, I'm going to fly the airplane to Hawaii today. Someone needs to be in charge. Someone needs to be the leader. Someone needs to be in the flight deck controlling the aircraft to the destination. Normally that's going to be you because you started the company. Doesn't always have to be. But if you don't know where it's going and you don't have guidance, people like you, people like me, people that help them, how are they going to get there? It's not going to happen. And the entrepreneurial highway is littered with the souls of people who had a good idea, but they didn't know how to actually follow up and act it out.
Is it like the Bermuda Triangle?
Very much.
I love these analogies. So, okay, would this analogy make sense then? Business owners own planes, but they aren't necessarily in the pilot seat, and you help them get in the pilot seat.
Yeah, I get them. Someone's got to command the aircraft. Someone has to be in control of the situation, not only when things go right, but when things go wrong. I'll give you an example, and I use this as an analogy, and I hope I'm not derailing your questions.
This is amazing.
Here. So I use the analogy that when you get on an aircraft, and most people have been on an airplane at some point, do you ever wonder why you turn right? Get in the airplane,
okay,
and you turn right, you sit in your seat, you buckle up, not a care in the world. Put your headphones on, you're in La La Land. Now, have you ever turned left? Left is where we sit. Left is where the pilots sit. You don't know me. You've never met me. You have no idea really if I'm qualified. You're assuming I am, but you trust me. As a matter of fact, you trust me with your life and your family's lives, but you have no idea anything about me. You don't know, hey, Steve, how many hours do you have? Hey, Steve, did you get enough sleep today? Hey, Steve, are you feeling suicidal? Hey, Steve, I've never had anybody come up and ask me those questions. So my question is why is it that you trust me as a pilot, but yet you will hire employees, you'll interview them, hire them, supposedly train them, and when they start messing up, you push them out of the way and you put on your superhero cape and you start doing their job for them. But you wouldn't do that in an airplane. As a matter of fact, I've been doing this for 30 years as a commercial airline pilot. I've never had somebody come up to the cockpit and go, hey, Steve, it looks like you're having a hard time today. I think I'm going to take over and I'm going to do this. Haven't happened. So the question you have to ask yourself is, why is it you trust me in the business that I'm in, but you don't trust your own business and your own employees that you've hired? Where is the disconnect? Because pilots are not perfect. We are humans. We make mistakes. So you've got to ask yourself, what is it that gives you, and I mean, it's a good question to ask. What is it? It gives me that solitude that makes me feel warm and fuzzy when I get on an airplane. And I would say it's our systems, the systems in our business, and the redundancy is what saves lives, because pilots make mistakes. We're not perfect. So going back to that question, what systems are in your business? Because if you think about all the systems that are in the airline industry, the processes, procedures, checklists, I've been trained by Boeing for almost 30 years on running aircraft and normal, abnormal, emergency situations. You wouldn't want me going, okay, we just had an engine catch on fire. I kind of remember this about 10 years ago in training, but I'm not really sure. Does anyone here remember how we do that? See, in the aviation industry, whenever there is an emergency or a situation, we train for it and train for it and train for it, so that if hopefully it never does, but we know statistically it will happen. When that day comes, we are prepared because of muscle memory. The challenge is most business owners, they just hope and pray it never happens. And then if it does, they're in shock. And what's the first thing they do? They want to blame. They want to be an excuse. They want to be denial. They want to be below the line. What do? We take ownership. We're accountable. We're responsible. So again, there's a lot to be learned from the airline, I think, from the airline industry about how we're trained, because, if more people ran their businesses the way airlines run, there'd probably be less catastrophes.
Wow.
And if you did have an emergency, we have emergencies. We work the problem. We work the problem to the solution. And there's a very, very specific way that we are trained to deal with emergencies. And I when I coach people, I train them how to deal with emergencies the way we are taught to deal with them. If Boeing has spent millions of dollars figuring this out, the human psyche of dealing with I have 350 people on board. The aircraft weighs 770,000 pounds, and we carry about 230,000 pounds of fuel. It's a $250 million aircraft. So I'm thinking to myself, if Boeing feels that I'm competent enough and I'm trained to take this aircraft and deal with any case scenario, wouldn't it make sense if I could just teach that in someone's business? So that's kind of what I do.
It just selfishly, we've done almost 500,000 miles in the air in the last handful of years. Should I be praying every time I go up there? Because when it gets bumpy, I get stressed out and is that just,
It's like, I'll tell you, the dynamics of air are just like the dynamics of water. So have you ever been in a boat?
Yeah.
Okay. So you hit waves.
Yeah.
Same thing. You're just hitting waves in the air. Planes have never crashed because of turbulence. They don't crash because of turbulence.
And why? Just because it's such a silly question then.
It's just like a boat
crashing because of water. What a great analogies. Have you always been so good at analogies? I need to learn from you when it comes to analogies.
It's a skill I've learned. They're called bridges. So I've learned to make bridges to where, if I just did thermodynamics and I talked about the aerodynamics of an aircraft, that would make sense. But when I say it's like waves in the water, oh, that makes sense. So I'll give you an example. When you're on an airplane and you see the wings moving during turbulence, a lot of times people get scared because they're like, oh, the wings are moving. Well, I mean, they're supposed to. You're probably seeing them move probably 3 to 4 feet of center, top and bottom of center, 3 to 4 feet. They can actually bend up to 11 feet, top and bottom of center, 22 feet before they snap. So we would be knocked out from the G's that we were pulling before anything happened. So planes don't crash because of turbulence. They're fine. They fly on one engine just fine. I probably spent close to probably more hours in the air than on the ground in my adult life.
Wow.
And so if you put it in that perspective, I've probably dealt with every emergency you could imagine. I've been to almost every continent except Antarctica, almost every major city in the world. I've seen a lot of things. And when I first got into this analogy thing, I used to separate my airline training from my business ownership. I didn't see the correlation. I was like, I don't see it because I'm just a pilot is what I thought. That was my perception. And I'm a business owner, different perception. Until one day, you want to hear the story?
Oh, absolutely.
So we were growing our business. And, the reason I started my buying real estate and I started a property management company is I wanted something that was not relying at all upon the aviation world. I wanted something that I could build a revenue source that was going to be synergistically working with my real estate portfolio and would be completely independent of the airlines. So we started this management company and I had no clue how to build a business, how to run a business. I had no idea. So as we started to build this business, we realized that there's a lot to owning a business and running a business, and especially when the business is growing. Next thing you know, we're working 60, 80-hour weeks. Everyone is mad at us. Everyone is complaining. Everybody thinks I should have some magical answer like I'm the Pied Piper. And it was chaos. We were growing, which was great, but we were losing them just as fast on the backside from upset clients. The employees were stressed, so they were quitting. Customers were pissed. They were firing us. It was just the analogy of circling the toilet was probably a good analogy. So one day, my business partner and I are sitting there and I'm like, we need to get better customer service. That's why they're leaving. We're not giving good enough service to them. Like if we got to give service, they would stay. So I find a customer service consultant.
Wow.
And he comes in and he says, okay, tell me what's going on. We said, well, these are the problems. This is what we're doing. We think we need to train our team how to give better service. He goes, okay. He goes, give me an example of something that is a problem. And I'm like, well, I can give you my biggest dumpster fire that's going on right now. And that's when sales closes a client and it gets handed off to operations. There's a huge disconnect of what sales offers and what operations delivers. And so there's a lag in time. There's a misinterpretation of who got what, and it's just chaos. And it's kind of like the DMZ border right there. We lose a lot of people in that world. So he says, okay, it's me, my business partner, and our senior manager in this meeting. He says, okay, you two go out of the room. Steve, you stay here. I said, okay. He says, Steve, I want you to tell me exactly what happens when you take a client from sales to operations. Tell me exactly all the steps. So I go through the steps. I'm like, we do this, we do this, we do this. And he's writing feverishly, writing notes, making flow charts. And I'm all done. He shows it to me. He says, is this how you do it? Is this exactly how it's done? I'm looking at it. I said, yep, that's exactly how we do it. He goes, okay. He goes, you go out, bring your business partner in. Business partner comes in, asks him the same question. Goes through the whole thing again, says, is this exactly how you do it? Yep, that is 100% how we do it. You go out, bring your operations manager in. Same question. Says, okay, you guys all come back in the room. Guess what? I'm sure you know where this is going.
I mean, it's all amazing.
He takes 3 sheets of paper and he slides them across the table and he says, this is your problem. We each had a completely different way
Wow.
of doing the same procedure. He says, folks, you don't have a customer service problem. You have a lack of systemization problem. He says, if you don't systematize your business and consistently produce the same expected product over and over again, you will never be in business and you won't stay in business. I was like a bing. Wow. So we're like, huh, interesting. So I start thinking, okay, systems. So I start reading books on systems. I'm reading everything I can on systems. And there wasn't many books at the time. There was the E-Myth and other standard ones, but nothing relatable to what I really was trying. Nothing was catching my eye. So I read this book called Checklist Manifesto. I don't know if you ever read it. It's
Never
a great
heard
book.
It, actually.
Yeah. It's a doctor who is trying to standardize the medical industry because of so many malpractice lawsuits in the medical world, in the surgery room. No standardization. So he starts going, he's talking to construction people. They have checklists, they have procedures. Finally, he gets led to the #1 checklist systemization company in the world, Boeing.
Wow.
So he goes to Boeing and they basically show him, and it was an aircraft that I was flying at the time, which was a Boeing 787, which was a brand new aircraft. And they show him the systemization and checklist of how to run an aircraft, how to fly and deal with it via checklists and systems. So I'm sitting there thinking, oh my God, wait a second. I'm a pilot. I know this. Like I fly this same aircraft. They're showing them how Boeing goes through systemization and how they process, how they build a plane with miles and miles of wiring and everything that goes into this metal tube getting in the sky. Well, it's composite, but so I'm sitting there and I'm like, interesting. So now as I'm going to the airport and I'm going to work, I'm looking at it through a different lens. I'm looking at all the systems. People are checking in their bags. How do the bags get to where they need to go? Going through security. I'm just looking at everything from a different light.
Wow.
So I'm starting to get very intrigued with the airlines as a business of systems. So one day, this was my epiphany. This was my turning point here. One day I'm sitting there and I'm waiting for an aircraft to come into the gate to come and park. It was a 777 at the time. And I'm just sitting there and I'm thinking about systems. I'm writing notes and I'm thinking all these things in my head. And I watched this aircraft come up to the gate. So imagine it's a Boeing 777, holds about 350 people. Takeoff weight's about 775,000 pounds. And it holds about 236,000 pounds of fuel. It's kind of like an apartment complex with wings. So this aircraft comes up to the gate. And once it gets to the gate, all the passengers get deplaned, right? And the system. They don't just run for the door. There's a system. All of the cargo doors. Now, normally when someone is looking at this, it looks like chaos. There's doors opening. There's carts running around. There's just people doing all this stuff. But in the airline industry, we call it the dance. And it's very specific and it's very choreographed. And nothing is happening by chance on that ramp area and in the aircraft. So I want you to picture this. You've got all of the bags getting offloaded, getting dispersed to either other aircraft or to the baggage claim area. You've got all the people that have deplaned. Now you have cleaners are coming in and they're cleaning the aircraft. Caterers are coming in from the other direction and they're restocking all the food, consumables, everything with that. You've got fuelers. Fuelers are hooking up these fuel lines. It takes 1 hour of high pressure fueling to fuel this aircraft.
Wow.
Maintenance, they're doing all of their safety checks. They're checking wheels, engines, tires, airframe. They're checking everything to make sure it's airworthy. The flight attendants, they're in the back. They're checking all the safety of flight items, oxygen, exit doors, everything they need to. And we pilots are up front. We're loading the flight computers. We're checking the weather, destinations, circuit breakers, everything to make sure that we can get there safe, efficient, and on time, right? Within 1 hour, 350 people get back on this aircraft. All of their bags are loaded. This plane is buttoned up, closed up, all the doors. We push back from the gate. And here's the thing, Jay. Not one of us has had to talk to anyone else to do our job.
Wow.
That's a system. Now, not only is that a system, but I can be in Tokyo, Japan, London, England, Sydney, Australia. That system is running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every second of the day. That dance is happening with an airline somewhere in the world. So if you think about that, why couldn't, and so I'm sitting there watching this and I'm like, if this works here, why can't this work in my company? And that was boom. It was like, it can. Wow. So so that's what I did. I started going in and we started systematizing everything in our company. We started with the biggest dumpster fire, which was the handing over. We started creating processes, procedures, checklists. I kind of jumped into my aviation head and started basically creating this. And guess what happened? All of a sudden, magically, things started working. Less headaches, less problems. All of a sudden, we could see who was accountable, who was doing something, who was not doing something that they should, all based on our key performance indicators, our metrics, and our checklist. And then we started to grow and scale because all of a sudden the fires started to subside. The customers started getting happier, which eased the stress level of the employees. Everybody saw that we were actually taking actionable items to solve the problem. And lo and behold, things started working. And so that was kind of our march. We became the fastest growing company in the state of Texas. And eventually we sold to a venture capital firm. We had 60% of my company was outsourced to virtual assistants in Mexico because we are so good at understanding everyone's position and right person, right seat. We got so dialed in when the company came to buy us, and we weren't even looking to sell because we were looking to franchise it. They were like, we've never seen a company that's running on autopilot without you guys being involved. And it's running and growing exponentially. Everyone's doing their job with the amount of margins you guys have. And so we explained what we did. I explained how we did it. And they were like, we've never even heard of that. I'm like, well, you probably have never had an airline pilot take what he's learned from Boeing and inject that into a business. And they're like, no, we didn't even know that was a thing. Like, well, it is now.
Have you written a book on that? Because I know, or is that empire building mistakes?
No, actually, it's funny. I've been contemplating writing a book, and I was gonna. So I wrote a book leading up to it. I was thinking of writing a book called Takeoff After the Sale, and talking about everything that happened.
I'm going to read it. What a profound story. Did you have any inkling at all throughout that process to continue going with it, or was it really? I have a passion for flying, and how can I create more abundance in my life? Obviously teaching. You're a great teacher.
That's a great question. I've never known where this was going to go. I really have. I wish I could say it was designed, but it wasn't. And one of the things that my business partner and I were building the business together. We were in the middle of looking to franchise it. We were in talks to license it in Australia and in Malaysia. Because we were getting very well known for how we were doing this. But this company came along and they said, we'd like to, that we had 1,000 properties. They had 10,000, everything we wanted to do with the growth of where we wanted to go. And really the financial backing that they had, we did not have that yet. And we thought, you know what, we could create the wheel or we can just ride on theirs. And, basically we made the decision to just fold in with them, sold it at a very good multiple. I became a vice president for them. Wow. I did a lot of stuff with them. So I got to learn about venture capital and I got to learn that whole world that I didn't know anything about. And then when I was done, I did my 2 years with them. And it was a great experience. And then when I was done, I had a lot of people approaching me saying, hey, aren't you the guy that did this and built the company? I'm like, me and my business partner. Yeah. They're like, could you show me how to do it?
Really?
Like, yeah, I could, cause I was asking a lot of different, when I talk to business owners and clients, I ask different questions than maybe I guess the standard person would, because I tell people like, I'm not a guru. I am still an airline pilot. Now I'm an airline pilot now because I love it, not because I need it. I mean, like I said, I just got in from Tokyo. I fly 2-3 times a month all over the world.
Wow.
I mean, as a little kid, this was a passion of mine. I don't know where it says that just because you have a certain amount of money in the bank, you should quit doing what you love doing. And so I'm like, you know what? I go to work and I really, what's funny is, like any world, like any industry, there's the spectrum. There's the people who love what they do, and then there's people who hate it. And then everyone is kind of silent, bell curve. People are probably in the majority in the middle. I go to work. I'm not caught up in the drama. I'm not caught up in the issues of the union and stuff. I just come to work and I just enjoy it. And I'm just like, hey, I'm just here to have a good time. Like, I'm just here to fly the plane, do my job, and go check out Tokyo, and then I come home. And I because I don't need it, I have a different perspective of it, I guess. And so it's, when you're doing something because you love it, not because you need it, you tend to have a different perspective of how you look at things, right? I will tell you, when COVID hit, and I'm sure you remember, all the airlines were parking planes and they were doing some layoffs. And somebody called me, this guy gave me a call one time, and he said to me, he goes, I don't know who you are, but he said, you are the highest requested person on my podcast, so I'd like to have you on. I said, sure, absolutely. And so he was an airline guy, and there was a lot of people in the airline industry. And so he said, a lot of people know of your story of 9/11, and they know of you on social media and stuff. And one of the questions someone asked is, what's the difference between you today, which was about 20 years after 9/11, and the day after 9/11 when you got furlough notice? And it was a good question, and I had to think about it. And I said, the difference is I took massive action. I did not let my ego and my pride get in the way of looking dumb. I didn't care. People do what they must, not what they should. I had a must. I had to figure out how I was going to survive. A lot of people are like, well, I'd like to do this, but I don't know. And I didn't have a choice. My back was against the wall and I had to figure it out. And so I told them, the only difference is I took massive action every day. I mean, I wasn't doing this with a spoon. I was doing this with an excavator scoop. And I was taking chunk after chunk out of success, because I was like, I'm not going to let this beat me. And number one, and number two, I've already touched the hot stove. I know what it's like. And I don't want to be in that position. Listen, Jay, I think we all have been in situations that we failed at something in life, and maybe we were responsible. And the thing I tell people, it's not really the money. It's the laying your head down on the pillow at night and thinking and letting your mind do that. To me, that is the worst. That is the worst thing. And so I had to figure out that, okay, you know what? I am responsible for myself and my own situation. And I'm not going to lay my head down thinking, what should I have done? I'm just not going to do it. And I'm not going to be, there was a lot of pilots back then during 9/11 running scared, in the sense that they were going to China and flying planes. They were going out to South America. They were taking a job anywhere they could go. And I thought, you know what? I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not going to run from this. Like, I'm going to stand my ground. I'm going to do what I want to do, because I'm just not going to let it beat me. And it wasn't, and again, there was no social media. When I had to learn about real estate and business, there was no YouTube. I had to go to the library, and I had to get a library card, and I started reading books, and that's what I did,
Really?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I did. I mean, this is 2001, right? The YouTube didn't exist. Google was nothing.
How important was that? Because we're a big reader community in the podcast. How important was that?
Oh,
for your growth.
That changed my perspective, because, back in the day, that's the only way you would learn. And I read a book a week. Every week I read a book. I was there every week religiously swapping out my books. Like, to me, that was my must. It wasn't an option. It was like every Monday I've got to go back and get a new book. And that's what I did.
You have someone listening to this right now, and it's 2023, 2024. There's uncertainty in the market. Everyone's, highs and lows, middle. How do you get someone out of a slump?
That's a good question. I have a different perspective of helping people. I tell people I can be nice or I can be honest. I can't be both. And sometimes, me being honest is being nice. It's in a different way. I think the reality is, and I say this respectfully, because I know everybody has a different position in life. We're not as important as we think we are. nobody cares. A lot of times people look at this outside world of all this news and information because they think they're so important. You know what? Get up every day. Listen, I am a big believer that every day we wake up, we have a decision that we are going to make. We are either going to be better or we are going to be worse than the day before. That's our only decision we can make. And if you don't decide to be better, then you made a decision. And I'm just a big believer that if you listen, nobody cares, if nobody cares if you're having a good day, nobody cares if you're having a bad day. When one thing I realized, Jay, is when I sold my company, I thought in my mind that I was going to be in this cool club. I broke through the glass and I was going to be able to relax. And I was going to, Monday morning, guess what I was told? I sold the business on Friday. Guess what happened Monday?
I don't know.
My wife said, you got to take the trash out.
Oh,
and I'm like, take the trash out. Like, we just sold our business.
I gave up
millions
that
of
battle.
dollars.
I'll never forget that argument, by the way, with Jenna.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't care. You still have to take the trash out. Yes, and so and all of a sudden, as the weeks went by, nobody really cared that I sold my business. Now you're kind of lonely. So my expectation was that I was going to be in this cool club hanging out. Well, that doesn't exist. The realization is it's the journey. Sharks don't swim to a destination. If they stop swimming, they die. We don't have a destination except maybe the afterlife. Our journey is the journey of who we are. So if you're miserable in the journey, if you don't like the output, change the input. If you want a different result, change who you're around, change the words you say, change it. You know what? The economy goes to shit. Who cares? Does that mean the sun's not going to come up tomorrow? No. You know what? And again, I'm just some of those people, you know what? Get your shit together, do a reset, get your head right, and focus. You can either look at it as a problem or a solution. In a bad economy, there are more millionaires made than a good economy. Why? Because they see opportunity and they see solutions.
Do you think there's a percentage of entrepreneurs that just don't want to work?
Absolutely. 100%.
I got to be honest with you. I think that's about where I'm at in the whole thing.
I think there's a lot of people, and listen, I don't think
I'm
there's
trying to get near the ones that want to work.
Yeah. And listen, I think people's biggest downfall is for two things: laziness and greed. They're either lazy or they're greedy. And I think that, yeah, I think that, look, I think at the end of the day, people want the easy button. Nowadays it's so, again, I think, and this is where I think social media has not done us a good favor. But a lot of things we do is very, very, glamorous. And so we're lazy.
How have you turned your social platforms into constructive tools instead of deconstructive tools for your businesses?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in leading through education. I always try to educate. I always try to help. I think social media can be used as a great tool if you use it as a tool. And if you don't, then it can be used as something different. But I just think that, we cause our own success or misery. And I think, again, we wake up every day with our own decision to make. And listen, if you said to me, if I said, hey, Jay, how's it going? And you're like, oh man, it's bad. I got a bad back and I just lost my business. And you went on for 5 minutes. I'm going to say sorry. But 5 minutes later, I've got my own problems. I've got my own life. I've got my own shit I deal with. I'm going to go, yeah, Jay's fucked up. Good luck. Hope it works out for him. But I'm going to move on. I don't mean this ill, but I don't care. And so a lot of people think that more people are going to care about them. You're not as important as you think you are. I'm not as important as I think I am. Nobody really wants to know how I'm doing. And sadly, not everybody wants to see you succeed. Not everybody wants to see you. When you let's say you leave your job and you're going to start a business and you're going to be an entrepreneur, everyone cheers you on. Oh, that's great. You should do it. Congratulations. And they may shake their head and go, yeah, it's not going to work. After you start having some success, all of a sudden their pats on the back start inward looking to them, and they're thinking, if he's doing it, maybe I need to change some things. No, it's easier to put Jay down. I'm just going to tell Jay, like, Jay, why are you doing all this? Like, just keep your job, man. Like, you were a firefighter. Keep being a firefighter. Why are you doing all this other stuff? You would have been fine. And then you keep moving. And then those marks and comments become criticism. And then they start putting you down. And as you keep, slow and steady, man, slow and steady, focus, slow is fast, fast is slow, slow and steady. And next thing you know, you start having a win, just one win. And then you get 2, and then you get 3, and then it starts snowballing. And then they admire you. And then they come back and they're like, man, good for you. I'm glad you could do it. You know how many people told me how dumb I was for starting a management company and being a speaker? And I'm like, first of all, I didn't ask you. I get people all the time. I'm like, funny, I don't remember asking you your opinion. So I'm not sure why you're even giving it to me, number one. But okay, that's fine. I'm a big boy. I'll take it. Number 2, they're really telling me what they can't do is really what they're doing, which is fine. Listen, I don't care. Everyone's got their own demons. Everyone's got their own challenges. All good. I worry about me. I worry about me, and I worry about the people that I help and the people that I coach. And when I get somebody that calls me up and says, Steve, you changed my life, or you saved my marriage because we figured out how to start making money in this business and we didn't know what we were going to do. Wow. That's when I know I'm doing the right thing.
Did you always, did you always consider yourself a teacher, or is that something that's come to your radar?
No, not at all. Not at all. I think that as I've gotten older and grayer, if I had hair, I think our lives are made up of books, and books are made up of chapters. Chapters begin, chapters end. So high school year is a chapter, college year is a chapter, our 20s, chapters. I can't take my 20s into my 30s, right? It's the chapter's over. I think we go through phases of life that there are chapters. Chapters begin, chapters end. Some are long, some are short, some are good, some are bad chapters, right? When I owned my business, we owned that business for 7 years, that one in particular. That was a 7-year chapter. When we sold the business, we had many, many people come to us, and we were kind of at the top of the game. I mean, we were very well known. We were making money. Everyone's like, why'd you guys sell? You were doing so good. And I said, you know what? It was time to close the chapter. Doesn't mean the chapter you don't have to drag this thing out and it be a miserable, horrible thing. It was time to close the chapter. Sometimes chapters close sooner than others, but it was time to close the chapter.
Yeah. How many other pilots did you know that built a business while they were being a professional pilots?
Not many.
You got to be in a small club of people in the world.
Yeah, not many. Not many. I mean, it's funny. I've got a good friend of mine. I don't know if you know Marshall Silver.
Not personally, but I've heard and that he's and seen he's a very influential person in the speaking arena.
Yeah, very a great guy. He's a mentor and a friend of mine. And he said to me, he said, Steve, he said, you being someone who built a business and sold it, there's thousands of you. He said, you being a great prolific speaker and presenter, he goes, that can really convey your message very well. He goes, there's a lot of you too. But you being an airline pilot that still flies a Boeing 777 and use that knowledge to build, scale, and grow and sell a company while you're doing it on stage, he goes, I don't know of anyone else. He goes, I'm sure if you were on stage with anyone else, and he goes, not putting anyone down, but he goes, Grant, Ed, he goes, I don't think any of them can fly a Boeing 777. He goes, that's something that only you have. He goes, that's your uniqueness. He goes, and you can tie these analogies of what you see and what you do like no one else, because no one else has done it. So I don't think there's many people.
I guess if we were to put a theme to this conversation, how would we encapsulate or analogize it? What's the message for our listeners to come away with this and take the reins, or maybe now I'm not going to use horse analogies. I got to use airline analogies.
Well, I think number one,
cockpit and
fly I think number one, you've got to find your destination for your business and for your life. Number one, I really think that's imperative. Number two, sometimes the answer is right in front of you. You just need to step back to see it. And I was a product of that. The answer to our solving our challenges was right in front of me as a pilot.
Please, like, I want to know, are you accepting applications for people listening to this to be able to enroll in some of your programs? And if so, what do they have to do? Where can they go? How can they,
Yeah, I am. I've been doing, actually I've been doing 2-day events. And I've been doing I do weekly masterclass webinars. Every week I do a masterclass. It's free. And I use a lot of the analogies of how people can build their business to grow. And so I do it complimentary, because I think there's a lot of people out there that, they don't understand what they're doing wrong with this changing economy and the changing market. They don't get it. And so my thing is let me give you my perspective of what you should do. And then if you think we're a fit and you want to take a next step and have a conversation, that's great. Or you can take a lot of knowledge and move forward from there. But every week I do a masterclass webinar. And I think it's important that people realize and learn that they've got to think differently. Again, if you want a different output, change the input. If you don't like the results of your life right now and the results of your business, it's a mathematical equation. Change the front end of the equation, you'll change the output, you'll change the results. So I think that's it. Just kind of looking at things differently, changing the input, and creating that final destination.
And where can people enroll for this?
Then go to my website. It's steverozenberg.com. And again, it's every week I do it. They can go there and they can sign up. It's complimentary. And it's about 60 to 90 minutes. And it will be a fire hose, just like you had right here, of how to grow your business and become that person, that $10 million CEO or whatever your goal is, mentally first before you go off and start chopping trees down. Let's sharpen the axe.